In this training system, the trainee will learn about the major operations in a coil fed press line, including uncoiling, straightening, feeding, and stamping. The trainee is also taught the major types of die and die components and the operations which are performed by the dies and punches. In the following segment from Lesson 1, the trainee is learning to identify various components which may be found in pressed dies.
Also found in the upper die assembly are pilot pins. Pilot pins enter the pilot holes just as the die is about to close. One or more pilot pins may be used with progressive dies. The purpose of the pilot pins is to register or locate the material as it goes through the die. This is a stripper. The purpose of a stripper is to make sure the material does not stick to the punch after cutting or forming. Some die components are more often found in the lower die assembly. One of these components is a spring-loaded lifter. The purpose of a lifter is to lift the material off of the lower die after each press cycle. Lifting the material is sometimes necessary to keep it from buckling or hanging up in the lower die cavities when the strip is advanced by the feed. Another typical lower die component is called a guide rail. Guide rails are sometimes called stock guides. Guide rails are the first die component that the material enters as it comes out of the feed. The purpose of guide rails is to help keep the material straight as it enters and travels through the die. Guide rails vary considerably in length depending on die design. The guide rails in this die are only a few inches long. This die, however, has guide rails along the entire length of the die. There is often a need to create holding or stripping pressure within a die. These are die springs. Die springs are used to exert pressure on other die components, such as stripper plates, pressure plates, and cam slides. Air cushions used with pressure pins.
In Lesson 2, trainees learn to dress safely for press operation and learn the location and function of the operator controls on the press. When the trainee has finished the lesson, he or she will be able to start, stop, and operate a press in each of the 4 operating modes. Lesson 3 shows the trainees the components, controls, and operation of the coil-fed press line. This includes cradles and reels, powered and non-powered straighteners, loop control devices, and feed equipment. In addition, the trainees learn to use in-plant safety equipment to safely lift and load a stock coil onto a reel or cradle. The first part of Lesson 4 instructs the trainee on the operator duties, including monitoring the press line operation and checking parts. In the second part, from which the following video segment is taken, the trainee learns to identify coil and material problems.
You may be required to replace a coil containing excessive squatting. Check with your supervisor before attempting to use it. The second condition is called clock springing. Clock springing is the tendency for the coil wraps to separate from one another and spread out around the diameter of the coil. This makes the coil appear to grow. Material specifications such as hardness and temper are often the cause of clock springing. When a coil contains a clock spring effect, uncoiling from a cradle can help to control this tendency, since the weight of the coil rests on the outside wrap. It may also be possible to use a reel to uncoil material which contains a clock spring effect. Reels can be equipped with hold downs or restrictors to minimize clock springing. You may be required to replace a coil which contains excessive clock springing. Check with your supervisor before attempting to use it. A third condition which can be identified as soon as the retaining bands have been cut is called telescoping. Telescoping is the tendency for one or more coil wraps to move sideways. It is caused by the way the coil was aligned and wound. Telescoping can lead to material damage during the uncoiling process. Telescoping can also cause material alignment problems as it is being uncoiled. Coils with severe telescoping may need to be replaced. If you find a coil with a telescoping condition, check with your supervisor before attempting to use it. In addition to adverse conditions in coils of material, there may be adverse conditions in the material.
2 troubleshooting job aids are provided with Lesson 4. This job aid helps the trainee identify adverse coil and material conditions, reinforcing information presented in the videotape. The other job aid gives additional information on how to measure camber and the causes and corrective actions for camber. In Lesson 5, the trainee learns the remaining procedures to restocking an existing setup, including loading the coil, setting and adjusting all stock handling equipment, and walking the strip through the press line and the die. Lesson 6 instructs the trainee on identifying and correcting a wide range of quality problems. The trainee also learns to identify different types of piece part features and how these features are produced in the die. This information is critical in developing good troubleshooting skills and for communicating problems to the die setter. An additional troubleshooting job aid is provided to help the trainee in identifying indicators of problems with drawing operations. In Lesson 7, the trainee learns how to measure and gauge piece part features using micrometers, calipers, go, no-go type gauges, and gauges and measuring devices on gauge fixtures. The trainee is also provided instructions on filling out basic SPC charts. Lesson 8 is the first of 5 lessons which train an operator to become a die setter. In this lesson, the trainee is shown how to remove the stock from the press line at the end of a production run and to remove and install the press die. In the following segment from Lesson 8, the trainee is being shown how to rough adjust the press shut height and install the die during the setup.
Adjust the shut height until the distance between the slide and the punch shoe equals the dimension that you calculated. If you are using an electric slide adjust, be sure that you turn the key to off after the adjustment. If you are using a manual adjustment, lightly retighten the slide lock nuts after rough adjusting the shut height. Store the safety block and replace the safety plug in its socket. If you are working on a press with a part revolution clutch, turn on the main motor and inch the slide down to bottom dead center. Be careful. Watch the slide face as you lower the slide. Be sure that the punch shoe hold-down bolts, if used, are aligned with the holes in the punch shoe. Press the main motor stop button and wait for the flywheel to stop coasting. If your press has a full revolution clutch, follow your shop procedures to safely lower the slide. The face of the slide should now be about 1/4 inch from the punch shoe. Adjust the shut height down until the face of the slide just touches the punch shoe. Once the rough shut height is properly set, be sure the electrical slide adjust key is turned to the off position. If your press has a manual adjusting screw, be sure that the slide lock nuts are retightened. This locks the slide at the shut height that you set. Now recheck the position of the die to be sure it is properly aligned with the coil feeding line. Depending on size and configuration, progressive dies usually require between 4 and 6 sets of die clamps to hold the upper die in place. Use T-bolts and die blocks.
2 die setter job aids are provided with Lesson 8. This lubrication job aid illustrates a number of methods of die and guidepost lubrication. It also shows the procedures and criteria for adjustment of an airless spray lubrication system. The other job aid shows the procedure for final adjustment of shut height when stop blocks are not provided.